Welcome to Season 4 of E-commerce Fastlane. This podcast helps resilient entrepreneurs thrive with Shopify. And now on to episode 177.
You're listening to E-commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Frontend, a powerful storefront solution from the team at Shogun. If you're tuned into the e-commerce space, and you likely are since you're a subscriber here at E-commerce Fastlane, you've no doubt heard about going headless or building a headless commerce storefront. And if you've gone as far as exploring some of these headless solutions, you know there's an incredible amount of info to wade through and to consider when making a storefront pivot. You may have heard that headless commerce means a move from a commerce-led to a content-led solution, or maybe you've heard that it represents a lean-in more towards an API-first approach. Either way, and as with any largely uncharted territory, it can be hard to work out what's growing faster, the technology or the terminology. The great thing about headless commerce is that it can get your Shopify store to load incredibly fast, eliminate the compromises when it comes to your brand's look and feel. You get full front-end control and flexibility, which will help you convert more of your website visitors. Amazing brands like Groove Life, Nomad, OneBlade, and so many more have taken their storefronts headless using Shogun's front-end platform. You can increase your conversion rate with a less than 1 second page load, and more importantly, you can empower your e-commerce team to manage content more efficiently with Shogun Frontend. They truly are the next generation in e-commerce experience platform. Request a demo and see what the front end can do for your Shopify brand. You can check them out at getshogun.com. That's GETSHOGUN, getshogun.com/front end for more details. Well, hey there, it's Steve, and welcome back to the E-commerce Fastlane podcast. Now, if this is your first time listening, this is an e-commerce show where we have honest and transparent conversations about building and thriving with your store powered by Shopify or Shopify Plus. If you're an ambitious, lifelong learner, which you probably are if you're here today, you're definitely in the right place. You know, we have new episodes. They come out twice weekly with any of the podcast players that are out there, like Apple Podcast and Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, many more. You can also stream current episodes, including a very relevant back catalog directly from E-commerce Fastlane. I believe we're up to 178-ish episodes, so there's lots there, a lot of great partners, a lot of great offers, so go check that out. Now, in today's episode, my guest is Will Christensen. He's the co-founder of a company called Data Automation. Now, the name may give it away a bit, but I think you'll be surprised about some of the time benefits that his company offers to Shopify brands and their legacy connections and different things to 3PLs. We're going to go down an interesting rabbit hole of time and being an entrepreneur and what it means to kind of automate some processes. So it's really, really cool. They really are, I mean, I'd say more on a high level, and I'm going to hear from him in a moment, but I think more on a high level, they really are an integration company, and they want to help you like automate a lot of these repetitive tasks. And I think a lot of people don't know what repetitive tasks are because they haven't, taken the intentional space to stop for a minute and understand that, in fact, this thing keeps going over and over and over again. And is there software that can help me do that sort of thing? And so they integrate all these things together. So I think it's going to be a great conversation. Getting time back, I think, is important. So you can kind of focus on more high value tasks as a human and let the computer take care of the rest. So let's welcome Will to E-commerce Fastlane.
Glad to be here.
So I mentioned a tiny bit, I may have butchered it, but a little bit at the top of the show about what data automation and what your platform does and your software and your technology. Are you able to kind of maybe distill it a little bit further and talk about maybe some of the problems that it's solving for Shopify brands and store owners?
Yeah, absolutely. So data automation, like you said, I love walking up to people at a trade show and they'll read my shirt, and that's exactly who we are. Our mission, our goal is to take back the world's manual time that they're spending on manual tasks and give it back to creative innovation. We feel that we are spending too much time as a society, as a world, on copying and pasting. I became so upset with how much this was happening. That's how I got started, was I was given a ton of copying and pasting work as the low man on a totem pole at an agency, and I was like, I just can't do this. And I got really excited about automating it, taught myself how to code, did a whole bunch of stuff, and here we are. So e-commerce just became a natural fit because there's so much volume, so much repeat stuff that people have to do.
Now, you mentioned a bit about this whole copying and pasting and some of the manual work from a previous company, but so I think I'd love to unpack that journey a bit, because I think it's always interesting why people build what they build. A lot of times it's very... In your particular case, it sounds like it was this manual work that you were doing. But on the flip side, I wonder if I can create a system or a process so that others get the benefit. Yes, you get the recurring revenue and the agency kind of part of that, running a business part of it and using your technology. But are you able to share maybe a little bit about just your journey leading up to the launch of data automation, like the brand and then the software and how it's iterated over time? And I guess a second part of that question is like, what do you believe uniquely positions you and the founding team, I guess, that, number one, to have the desire to even want to build this thing, getting time back, and number two, where did the expertise come from to actually create this platform?
Wow, that is a loaded question right now.
It is.
We're going to spend the rest of the time no. So let me start off with, I was the low man on the totem pole in an agency, and at the agency, they said, hey, are you a detail-oriented person? And I was like, oh, crap. Actually, yes, I am. And I went in and started having these conversations, and they gave me 16 hours of Excel work where I was just having to like copy this data from point A to point B. And I had taken a class in college where they had taught me some formulas and stuff, but I didn't really understand it. I didn't really know what was there. And I remember my boss sitting me down and being like, hey, this is a VLOOKUP. And I was like, a V what? And this is 10 years ago. So like, this is a VLOOKUP. And I was like, okay, all right. And he showed me how I could pipe data from one spreadsheet to another and link up, create what I call a helper column now. And it's lots of people call it a helper column, but that's the coined term where you take data from one spreadsheet and you link it up. And in its simplest form, that's what data automation does. We help people take data that's in one sheet or one system and push it over to the other so that you can compare it side by side or put it into a dashboard or have that order or inventory right where you need it, and it goes where it goes. And so my mind was blown. Like, wait, if Excel can take that data over there automatically, what else could it do? And so I began to Google and just dig in. I probably spent 370 hours just teaching myself how to go in there. I recorded macros. I went and looked at the code, and I got really excited about what this could do. And I became like the resident expert at the company for all things Excel, all things big, like 10,000 rows of data. You got to go, like, I had a developer walk up to me once and he said, hey, I need to take all of this data that's in columns and put it into rows, but I need to do it only every third row, and this column can't exist. And he was like, this is going to take me 4 hours to copy and paste. And I was telling somebody about it in the break room, and they were like, oh, go ask Will. And so I came in and I wrote him a little script. It took me about a half an hour, and he just ran the script, and poof, he had all of his data. And I was like, okay, that was fun. That was super, super fun. And my wife calls it, well, I call it extreme laziness. My wife sometimes calls it that as well. I have this real desire for efficiency. And even driving home from work, I was always like, well, let's try a new way just to see if we could shave another 30 seconds off of that. What if we could be more efficient? And so that's where my passion lied. Right? My passion was, how can I make things more efficient? That's the beginnings of where this began. And I can speak to who we are as founders and why we have some expertise in this area.
What's interesting about that, and thanks for sharing that, is that I also believe there's an opportunity to automate a lot of things. And I agree with you that there's certain kind of manual tasks and some interesting kind of, I call them almost hacks and fixes and things that can be done instead of a human actually doing. So I think there's error prone to these sorts of things. But this might be a loaded question too, but should everything be automated in a Shopify business? Because there's lots of pieces of the puzzle, from the business operations side to marketing side. There's lots of things that make this engine run. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what do you see? Is it a great thing to automate everything?
Steve, absolutely not. So it's the to be or not to be question, to quote a brilliant man. To be or not to be, to automate or not to automate. I tell people, when you're going out and looking at processes, you had better go down to the nitty gritty of what you're talking about and decide what's there. And we're going to talk about this when we get to the takeaway question. I'm just going to reference this part of the podcast.
Right.
The takeaway that I want to leave for everybody today is a framework that I've used to answer that question specifically. I call it 15115. Okay. So pretty easy to remember. 15115. Think 911, but put a 15 at the beginning. 15115. So I tell people to go and look at it and say more than 15 minutes a day, more than an hour a week, or more than an hour a month. And the reason I frame it in that term is you're looking for things that are going to happen in perpetuity. So if the thing you're trying to automate is not happening weekly, monthly, or daily, you probably should avoid automating it. And the reason people are like, well, yeah, but it's like a 17-hour thing. Or what about that thing where you said you wrote a script in 30 minutes that would have taken him 3 hours? Well, you got to remember that to get an automation expert on the phone or to get somebody there, you've got to pay him. And they generally charge upwards of $200 to $300 an hour to dig into that. So even my example of the 30 minutes to the 3 hours thing that was there, it wouldn't have paid off for him ROI-wise if I wasn't an internal employee in the company. So you've got to find things that are more than 15 minutes a day, more than an hour a week, or more than an hour a month. And the last 5 is 5 times manually. So I tell people, get out a sticky note, write 15115 at the top, and begin to write down the things that are happening on a regular basis. I don't care what it is, write it down. Then put a tick mark, a tally mark next to it. When you get to 5, that's when you can begin to automate. You can then begin to answer the questions that are necessary to say, is this automatable or should this automate? But if you can't get above that threshold of 15 minutes a day, an hour a week, or an hour a month, it's not worth your automation journey yet. Go get all of your top laying fruit that's above that, and then you can come back. And I've just learned that because I'm a little bit insane and I try to automate everything. And so I've gone down the rabbit hole so many times that I was like, you know what? I just need to make a rule for myself. And so that's my rule.
Yeah, no, I like that. So it's 15115. I'll make sure I put that in the show notes and stuff like that. I think it's important to have almost like a necessary framework and saying, hey, yes, I want to automate. I see benefits in getting my time back so I can focus on more high value tasks. I get it. But the next step is, well, what's the framework in it? And talking about if it's not weekly, if it's not monthly, if it's not daily, things that need to get done, then, okay, maybe this is not something to be automated. On the flip side, though, maybe there is some technology. I think that's where you kind of fit in. I'm also thinking about something, too. Like, I don't know if you have any examples that you can share that are more maybe Shopify kind of store specific about that you feel that maybe an automation flow might be a good use case for someone listening today.
Absolutely. Let me give you 2 or 3 nuggets for different pieces of automation that I've seen work for e-commerce sellers, and especially those who are on the Shopify platform. So one of the very first automations that I did was an out-of-stock order bot. This individual was using Shopify in conjunction with an inventory management solution. Okay. So they could receive orders and sometimes they would still be out of stock, or, the order comes in and poof, there actually wasn't inventory. And so at that point, they would either tag the order or the inventory management system would identify the order was out of stock, and we would trigger essentially a virtual assistant who would go in and check in on that order 3 or 4 times over the next 7 days and email the customer letting them know, hey, we're not totally confident on how this happened, but it looks like the order you just placed, somehow it's out of stock. And we are obviously very interested in making sure that you as a customer are taken care of. Right. So we are going to check back with you on a daily basis for the next 7 days. And if it doesn't come back into stock, I'm going to give you a link where you can book a time with me and we can talk about a replacement or something like that. And some people would only do this on high value items, right? If it's a $3 ring, you probably don't want to jump on a call with somebody. But if it's a $50, $100, $200, $300 item, you probably want an opportunity to sell them the green one instead of the black one.
Right.
Because the black one works.
Right.
And so we created this out of stock bot where it would go in on a daily basis, and you could even set it up for randomized time. So like it would check at 3:00 on one day, and then it'll check at 4:45 on another day. And you can make it so that it feels very natural for the individual who's getting the notification. And each day they'd get an email and say, hey, we checked. Unfortunately, the item is still out of stock. We're going to check on that again. And on day 3 or 4, you can be like, hey, we checked again. We'll continue checking for 3 or 4 more days. Or if you'd prefer, you can jump on that call and we can talk through and help you get a replacement. So that out of stock bot really help with the customer service side of out of stock notifications.
And that must actually link over then to some kind of email marketing platform that the brand is using, be it the Klaviyo's or the OmniSends of the world, to be able to connect to that. And that's where the notification gets pushed out to.
Yes. So at Data Automation, we built our own piece of software that we could use to do something like that. We have our own internal technology, but that tends to be only necessary when we're doing like tens of thousands of those. If it's like you run this process and it happens every week, you could use something like a Klaviyo or an OmniSend or one of those others. We often really like to use Zapier. We're Zapier certified experts. We're huge fans of that platform and the other iPasses that are out there, and we use them. So at Data Automation, we're a technology provider that uses the right software for the right tool. We're not completely tied to just using our own software to build that. So in that situation, I'd highly recommend a Zapier Workflow. The first one I built was in Zapier. We listened for the order to come in, we delayed 3 or 4 days, we checked it again, and we went through that process. And the cool part is you can actually send all of those email notifications through a lot of the different platforms using Zapier as well. So your trigger is in Shopify and then goes all the way down the pipe, and you can go back and modify the Shopify order to do exactly what you want it to do.
Right. All right. So this is probably going to be a nice pivot then to another question then about the different apps. You talked about Zapier, and I don't think a lot of people understand what the iPaaS means. It's IPAAS and what that means. But so maybe we can kind of unpack that a bit. What is the Zapier solution as it relates to your business, and then what they call this iPaaS, other ones? Let's just kind of unpack that a bit about these apps and just all the things that are out there that could help with automating and saving some time for brands today.
Absolutely. So I'm going to use another example because I like to leave these nuggets whenever I'm on a podcast for more e-commerce examples of automation.
Right.
So let's say that you had a lot of customer service inquiries that were coming in on your website, and it was like, hello@yourstore.com. A lot of people have, or support@yourstore.com. A lot of people are like, I'll just set up a support email. And you're just having that come into an inbox that's not even shared. That's a real opportunity for automation as well. I tell people to remove that email and put in a form. So let's say that you had that form, and the form, goes through and gets some of that basic information that you need from all support inquiries. Well, that's cool because the form goes into some sort of database somewhere, but you really don't want it to sit in a database somewhere. You want it to come into a place where you can actually manage it, like a Trello board or Asana, or you could pipe it into Zendesk, right? And Zendesk has a functionality where you can go in and do some of that if you just email it. But if you can get people to fill out a form, I found that form actually speeds up the process because you can ask like, hey, are you asking about a return? Or are you asking about a refund? Or are you asking about a delayed shipment? Or you can really get at a lot of information ahead of time.
Right.
Well, an iPaaS system, it's integration platform as a service. That's what you'd call an iPaaS platform. Okay. iPaaS is basically a tool that sits in the middle. We call it middleware. And the whole idea behind the iPaaS system, so Integromat is another example of an iPaaS. And if you Google around like software to connect to XYZ places or top 10 iPaaS systems that are out there, you'll find that Zapier's got a bunch of competitors out there. Zapier's got the biggest library at this point. But everything they do is they become the Rosetta Stone that sits between the different softwares. I call it Pangea. So imagine you've got Pangea, which is you in your Shopify store, and you've got all of these other places that you want to connect to Pangea. They're all little islands that are sitting around. The iPaaS system is essentially, imagine like a floating genie who floats around and builds automated bridges to all of these other systems. So it's a way for you to connect everything. So that form that people fill out, they can automatically take that and push it into a card inside a Trello board and then kind of go back and forth. We use a similar system, but we use it with ClickUp. So People fill out a form. Zapier pushes that into ClickUp. We use ClickUp, and ClickUp actually has an integration with our email software, so we can actually converse with people inside the card to handle their bug or whatever customer service they need.
I see. I'm actually going to ClickUp right now. See, this is the great thing about having a podcast is because you know, just life of learning, right? And there's so many great pieces of software out there. I mean, I've known of Zapier for quite a while. I know they have a Shopify integration through, you know, a lot of the different kind of, you know, from Slack to, you know, going through Gmail or G Suite. And like, there's so many connections that you can do that are built into the tool. But I think that's different to kind of what your brand does, because you can still use a lot of these kind of out of the box tools that are available. But I also think there's also the business side of trying to understand. You used your framework a bit, and I think that's a good starting point, the 15115. I think it's a good way of getting your head wrapped around wanting to automate. But then I also think that your business is allowing for and using other tools out there. So you more look at it holistically and saying, okay, you do have an automation problem. Let's sit down and talk about it. Almost like you're giving somebody some business acumen, or you're assisting them with some help with their business in general. Like, there's a problem. Can you offer the solution? Sometimes it's in-house technology that you've developed, and then that's just how you execute to help the brand. But it sounds like you also have access to other kind of off-the-shelf tools that are out there that you're expert at using. Able to kind of talk about the nuances of your business from wholly owned technology and then some external pieces of technology that you use as an overall scope of your business.
Absolutely. Our focus is to continue to build out our automation software to make that more effective, and we augment or continue what Zapier is already doing. So I wouldn't call us like Zapier 2.0 or anything like that. We work alongside Zapier.
Right.
So we call ourselves a SaaS enablement framework, which is a fancy way of saying we partner with SaaS companies to make sure that all of the integration problems go away. So we work with Shopify, with Skubana, with ShipStation, with Linworks, all of these different systems to help these e-commerce sellers solve the needs that are in there. And we've developed several different technologies that include Chrome extensions. So when it's not in an API, we'll actually connect those dots via Chrome extension. We've got a little browser robot who can go around in the background and get at data that's behind a login wall, but that doesn't have an API. And we've got our own technology. And then we've got the other pieces like Zapier that we're experts in, and we will build in whatever technology makes the most sense, because it doesn't make sense for me to go rebuild something that's already out there.
Right. Well, that's awesome. So let's pivot a bit over to a story. I think we all love stories, and I'm excited to hear this particular story. We kind of talked in the green room before recording, and if you're able to share one kind of notable story that you believe, you know, data automation has made a big impact, and just maybe talk about the journey, like who the customer is, and then any specific details that you can share after getting involved with data automation.
Yeah, absolutely. So the story I want to share is from a very good friend of mine. His name is Rolando Rosas of Global Tech. And Rolando is a longtime e-commerce seller. He got into it back in the day. He got handed a box of headsets when the company that he was at kind of liquidated and they left. Mm-hmm. And there was this big box of headsets, and he's like, "Are you going to do anything with these?" And they're like, "No." not, you know. He's like, "Oh, cool." So he took them home and he put them online and he sold them. He's like, "Wait a minute. This could be like a whole business." And, you know, fast forward, he's a multi-million-dollar seller. Yep. His problem was that he was using a lot of 3PLs and a lot of drop shippers and manufacturers that he'd built relationships with to do a lot of this. And he was having a real problem connecting all of those dots. He had used several different systems integrators to connect different things. He had tried using some of the out-of-the-box iPaaS solutions that are out there, and they just weren't handling the level of volume and complexity. And he jumped in with us and said, "Hey, can you do this?" And we dove in, picked apart everything that was going on inside his different connections and said, "Absolutely." Mm-hmm. And so we were able to connect all of those dots, and he experienced so much joy from seeing this process where he was having to copy and paste tracking numbers and manually upload inventory data. It just was painful for what was going on. And so we were able to go in and pick apart each one of those different processes and help him basically build a massive spider web of integrations to completely automate away inventory tracking number and manual inventory processes.
Wow. So that time freedom of having to do all that, not to mention just the potential human errors that can happen by a human actually doing that work, that must have an impact on the business also.
the level of impact. So you got to think COVID-19 hit and everybody and their dog was like, oh, I need better audio. He was poised. He found us 2 or 3 years before the pandemic, and he was poised and ready to be able to handle more volume than all of his competitors because he was ready for it. He had all of the systems in place to sync and show the different tools that were out there, so his orders were coming in. I mean, for him, speed is paramount, and errors creates huge problems. I mean, think about it. If you copy and paste that tracking number from an email and you miss the last digit, guess what? Nobody knows where that package is. So, yeah, the human error that was reduced all across the board, it was a big deal for him.
Wow, and I'm just actually over at global-tech.com, and yeah, he's got lots of, for those looking for headsets and phones, he looks like he has it all from all the big brands, from Jabra to Plantronics and Sennheiser.
Rolando is such an approachable guy. He takes questions all the time. He does podcasts every week where in his social media channels, if you've got any like, how do I use this headset? Or how do I increase the Bluetooth range? Or how do I mean, really, really sharp individual, and he's out there to educate people about it. And automation's been a key part of his business. He's a fantastic client.
Beautiful. So this show, I'm sure you can appreciate, really does have a diverse range of entrepreneurs that listen. Some are in their early stage, maybe even just thinking about maybe launching a Shopify store. They're getting kind of that entrepreneurial buzz and think, well, you know, what market am I going to get involved in? Where do I get my products? So they're kind of those early stage people. But there's lots of people that are maybe in the mid-market or even in the enterprise on the Shopify plus side of the business. And I know this is a little bit of a loaded question, a little bit, because there's all these different types of people listening today. We'd love if you could maybe share a little bit of feedback about like, what does great or what does success look like from your eyes and your vantage point? If a brand really is eager to grow and scale, what do you recommend they do today to help them kind of get to the next level?
Oh man, that is a loaded question. I mean, honestly, the first thing I would say is they had better be encouraging a culture of automation and efficiency inside their business. I got into a situation where obviously I spent so much time automating that manual process that I talked about before. And if the owners of that company ever are listening to this podcast, this was a situation where honestly, I learned a lesson of what not to do. When I got done automating that, I kind of got a pat on the back. Good job, Will. Like way to automate.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just increased my bandwidth by almost 50%. I eliminated 16 hours a week of manual work. I did the math, like how much am I being paid? I was like, wait a minute, good job, Will? Like a 10% efficiency gain, I should be getting more than a good job, Will. Like, let's talk about some monetary compensation for how much I just saved you in perpetuity.
Right.
And that just discouraged me, not to the point where I stopped automating because I'm insane and have a drive to automate. But for another employee, I think it would have stopped them dead in their tracks. They're like, wow, that was a lot of extra effort and growth on my part. And I just got a pat on the back. So you've got to create this culture of automation by going to the people who are actually doing the manual work. So you go to the bottom of the totem pole and you start asking them, hey, what are we doing that's currently manual that we could automate? And the reason I want to do that is because I want to take that smart brain of yours and put it on tasks that are going to be a little more impactful for the business that make you and me both more money. So you show me something that automate, I give you a bonus. And you don't have to be the one who actually automates it, but hand out dollars, real dollar bills for people who point out things that can be automated inside your business. Because if you're not, you're losing money. Because those individuals at the bottom of the totem pole are terrified of automation because they're like, well, my job's just going to go away. Well, if you hire the right people, they're going to bring that up anyway, and they're going to move forward with that. So one, hire the right people, but two, incentivize automation from the bottom up.
I like what you mentioned about maybe having the intentional space to actually think about what needs to be automated. I think that's part of the problem is that most businesses are just go, 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 go. I mean, I take lots of merchant calls like every month. I have a book of business that I manage, and I find that a lot of people are wearing a lot of hats and they get really involved in the minutia of the business. And a lot of businesses are doing really quite well right now, but they also haven't maybe paused for a moment. I think that's the point you're making is that, hey, go to the bottom of the totem pole and say, okay, what is not working or what's manual, making your $20 an hour, your $50 an hour, whatever it is to do these certain tasks. Is there a way to automate it? But I think it's just pausing and having the intentional space to just identify these weaknesses and then saying, can it be automated then? And then boom, that's where you fit in.
Steve, when you are going to automate, so I tell people automate, delegate, eliminate. And I actually run a podcast as well. We call it Automate, Delegate, Eliminate. Our first season is all about e-commerce. Automate, delegate, eliminate. That is the moment. You scale a business on automation, delegation, or elimination. Period. There's not another option. You either have to take that process you're currently doing and automate it, delegate it, or eliminate it so that you can go do other things that make the business more money. That's how you scale it. And so when we talk about what you said is so profound, make a space where that decision becomes the point where everything in the whole business pivots, and the person who makes the decision to eliminate a task that they were doing before by automating or delegating it gets rewarded for that process. And the more you can make that flywheel spin, the faster the feedback comes and the faster the whole thing just begins to grow, because you've essentially poured fertilizer inside the whole system and it just grows from that bottom up. So
love it.
Make that space.
Automate, delegate, and eliminate. I'll make sure I put that in the show notes too. I always like to share other podcasts. I think there's some great thought leadership out there in the world. And I think if automation is in your wheelhouse and you want to learn more about automation, obviously you'll be able to go to dataautomation.com, which we'll talk about in a moment. But having that podcast and having every week some new topic around this concept, I think it's fantastic to have that out there. It's an interesting niche that needs to be explored more. And thank you for releasing this podcast. I think this is great. So let's talk a little bit about the future of data automation. I'm always interested. I see where you are today, and I see that being a Zapier experts and other kind of software solutions, plus some wholly owned internal technology. But let's talk about maybe the North Star, I guess, for the remainder of 21, maybe even beyond 21. We're almost close into Q4 now. This year is whipping by again, but just end of the day, like, how are you going to continue to offer value and assistance to Shopify brands?
You know, I would say that the thing that's coming in the future is we're going to see more machine learning, and that's a fancy way of saying AI kind of situations. Machine learning and AI are very different, but they're kind of along the same vein of trying to teach a robot to do what a human could do. And look at that. I mean, you look at the Alexas, and my Alexa is not programmed to say, Alexa, I have a daughter named Alex, so we don't use that term. We use another one that I won't mention or else it'll go off like crazy right next to me. But you look at the way, great example, I can buy the hair gel that I use in 6 keywords. I don't have to go to the store. I don't even have to pick up my phone. I literally can turn around and say, Alexa, buy me more hair gel. And she says, what's your PIN? Throw in my PIN, and 3 days later it shows up on my door. You think about it 10 years ago, and to buy more hair gel was actually a lot more than 6 words. It was getting in a car, driving to the store, or finding the list that mom had on the refrigerator or that your wife had on the refrigerator and like penciling it in so that it eventually made it back to you. So I see more of that happening. I would not be surprised to see an Alexa skill, a Google skill, where they start to create a repertoire of like a conglomerate of all things on all Shopify stores. This is funny because it's coming right out of my head and I'm realizing, wait a minute, they're probably working on this. Yeah. Some sort of Alexa skill that takes and creates a categorical, scored, algorithmic database of all products so that people in general could order from Shopify brands, store owners everywhere via Alexa. There'd be some pretty big hoops to jump through for Amazon to want to allow you to play with some of those ball games, but I don't see it being outside of the question to make voice purchasing available for everyone. So how are we going to help? We're just going to continue to get involved in that process and helping people get there, but it's coming.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. We are nearing the end of the show for today, but what insights or takeaways would you like to leave with our listeners today?
So the one thing that I didn't share with everyone is after you've found that thing that was automatable, so you do the 15-1-1-5, 15 minutes a day, an hour a week, or an hour a month, then you do it 5 times manually. After you've found that idea, what do you do next? And what you do next is you answer a couple of simple questions. Where's the data now? Where does it need to go? What needs to happen to the data in between? What triggers the process to start? And how often is this happening? Okay, so where's the data now? Where does the data need to go? What happens to the data in between? What triggers the process to start? And how often is this happening? If you answer those 5 questions and you post on any forum anywhere, you're going to get answers that are actually more thought out. You're going to get people who actually go and understand what you're looking at, where you're going, picking apart all of those pieces. That's the key. The key to your process here is answering those questions and then handing that to an expert or handing that to a teammate to say, hey, this is my problem. And here's the origin of the data. Here's where I need it to go. What happens in between. That'll give you everything you need to delegate that automation to the right person.
Incredible insights. Thank you so much for sharing that. So how can people learn more about data automation? I guess the website or I guess your podcast, just any insights, case studies, blog, anything like that you want to share with the listeners today.
So obviously, Automate, Delegate, Eliminate, our podcast is a great place to go to gather more of those insights. I'm constantly posting on LinkedIn about different pieces of what we do, other podcasts that we're on, trying to help people understand where to go. We're constantly talking about new tools, so that's a fantastic place to go. If you would like to check us out on our website, dataautomation.com. If you want to watch a really cool automation happen, go fill out the contact form on our website, and you can see how we actually filter through the people who come and talk to us. So we've created a process where we automated a little bit of the interaction with those individuals, pre-fill the form, the whole bit. It's easier to kind of connect those dots.
Love it. Now, I guess one of the last things we did speak offline before recording today, and I understand that you would like to, offer someone listening today that says, yeah, I want to automate some things. I understand this process of just identifying maybe some potential weaknesses in my brand or how I want to improve some efficiency somewhere. And is there software that can help with that, bring that time back to me and reduce error handling and all these sorts of things? So what sort of offer did you want to share today?
Absolutely. So the offer that we'd like to give to your listeners is this. We would like to offer a half an hour of what we call systems design to any individual who would like to reach out to us. And that means that you're going to get a 30-minute phone call where we go through and we'll coach you on that 15115, or we'll dig in deep with you and talk about some of the different software pieces that you are going through. That call could be with me or will be with one of my team members who's part of our systems design. We have an integrations expert on our team named Sierra who does a fantastic job of picking apart and diagramming all of those different pieces of what's there. And we can get you started on that automation journey. And sometimes the phone call ends with, oh, have you heard of, and we insert the name of the software that does whatever you wanted it to do.
Love it, love it, love it. So I'll make sure that redirects. It'll be at ecommercefastlane.com/data automations. That's the pretty link that will be in the show notes, and that'll redirect to your landing page, and so you can take them up on that offer. But I think it's interesting to just, once again, take that intentional space of free 30 minutes, and thank you for offering that. I think using this kind of 15115 framework, and I love the questions, where is the data now, and where does the data need to go? And then what happens in between? I think that's very interesting. And so you have 30 minutes with you or one of your experts on your team, just to understand your business and saying, is there an opportunity here? And I think the answer is going to be yes.
So the goal actually of that call is not necessarily to walk away with an opportunity for us to automate something for you. The goal of that call is for you to walk away with coaching on how to approach that automation. And if there's an opportunity for us to work together and it's ROI positive, that's fantastic. Yeah. But our goal is to educate you on how to handle and look at and see where that can go so that we can get to a better place together and see ROI positive automation.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, Will, as you know, Shopify's mission really is to make commerce better for everyone. And it's very clear. I've been smiling and writing down tons of notes here today. Here I am recording super early in the morning, a couple cups of coffee. This has really, really, really been very impactful for me personally, because I believe that this is, and I'm front lines to a lot of big brands on the Shopify platform. And I know that they have some efficiency problems. So I've learned a ton today. So I want to just publicly thank you for, number one, getting on the show today, sharing your knowledge and giving back to the Shopify ecosystem, as I really believe what you're offering through, like I said, wholly owned technology in-house, plus access to some tools, plus some business skills of how can we automate things to improve efficiencies. I think you're really onto something big here. And I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing today.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. We're automation evangelists.
All right. Well, have yourself a great day.
You too.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Frontend, a powerful storefront solution from the team at Shogun. If you're tuned into the e-commerce space, and you likely are since you're a subscriber here at E-commerce Fastlane, you've no doubt heard about going headless or building a headless commerce storefront. And if you've gone as far as exploring some of these headless solutions, you know there's an incredible amount of info to wade through and to consider when making a storefront pivot. You may have heard that headless commerce means a move from a commerce-led to a content-led solution, or maybe you've heard that it represents a lean-in more towards an API-first approach. Either way, and as with any largely uncharted territory, it can be hard to work out what's growing faster, the technology or the terminology. The great thing about headless commerce is that it can get your Shopify store to load incredibly fast, eliminate the compromises when it comes to your brand's look and feel. You get full front-end control and flexibility, which will help you convert more of your website visitors. Amazing brands like Groove Life, Nomad, OneBlade, and so many more have taken their storefronts headless using Shogun's front-end platform. You can increase your conversion rate with a less than 1 second page load, and more importantly, you can empower your e-commerce team to manage content more efficiently with Shogun front-end. They truly are the next generation in e-commerce experience platform. Request a demo and see what the front end can do for your Shopify brand. You can check them out at getshogun.com. That's GETSHOGUN, getshogun.com/front end for more details. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.